Hi, I'm Pastor Mark Reynolds, and I want to thank you for tuning in. You are about to hear a message that can help you find your purpose and get closer to God. I believe that the Word of God is alive in the power of the Spirit, and that every time you hear it proclaimed, it has the power to transform your life. So wherever you are, say, God, open my heart and open my mind so that I can receive whatever you have for me today. If God is using this video ministry to bless you, then take a minute to let me know by sending a message to my Pastor Mark Reynolds Facebook page. Thanks again for tuning in, and may God bless you. If you are here for the very first time, I just want to tell you that we're in a new series called Peacemaking, Resolving Everyday Conflict. And if you are here and you missed the previous messages, and this is a topic that is particularly interesting to you, then you can catch up all of the other messages. The first 3 messages are on YouTube and also iTunes. And if you go to our church website, which is scumc.net, and click on the Messages tab up top, it'll take you to those links where you can either watch the video or you can download it on your phone and listen to it on the way to work. So I'm not going to review all of the messages that we've done so far because that might take the full time. So all I want to do is just remind you that last week we started talking about what Peacemaking Ministries calls the 4 G's of resolving conflict in a healthy way. The 4 G's. And last week we introduced the first G, which, does anybody remember for extra credit? It's go to what? Go to higher ground. Go to higher ground. We talked about how we all want to live according to a set of higher principles. We want to be people of integrity. But whenever we're faced with conflict or emotionally flooded, we just want to look at God and say, hey, God, take a walk. Right? I'm going to have to deal with some nasty stuff here, and so I need you to take a walk or go take a nap, and let me handle this, and then when it's all over, then I will invite you back into this relationship. And we see in Paul's letter to the Corinthians that he says you shouldn't do this. You should not leave God out of your conflict. It's very tempting. The last thing that we want to do when we're triggered is to ask the question, how can I honor God in the way that I resolve this? We don't want to ask that question. The question that we want to ask is, how can I win? And so it's very, very difficult, but Paul says we need to try to glorify God in everything that we do, including in the way that we resolve conflict. And so the main message was, don't abandon your Christian values when you get into an argument with somebody. Rather, lean into those values and allow them to be anchors in the storm so that you don't lose who you are and act in ways that are self-destructive or in ways that will hurt the people around you. So we went on to say, as we finished that message, that the problem is that we don't have the power on our own to do that. And this is a huge issue for some folks. They know that they need to lean in on their deepest values and ethics when they're in arguments, but they find it very difficult to do that. And so when they're only relying upon their own willpower and they're white-knuckling it, they often fail, because the truth of the matter is, at least according to the Bible, we don't have the power in us to deal with conflict in a way that honors God. Rather, we need the power of the gospel. And we said that the more that we understand, the more that we receive God's love and forgiveness and allow it to fill our hearts and minds, then the more we can love and forgive others. And so through the course of a lifetime of drawing close to God, inviting Him into our conflict, experiencing God's love and forgiveness, we are made into a new creation. Over the course of a lifetime, we become, Paul says, a new creation. And we receive that power. The Bible says resurrection power, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead. We receive that into our lives so that we can do what God is asking us to do. So that's go to higher ground. And today we're going to look at the second G, which is get real about yourself. Now this is tough, right? Get real about yourself. After we invite God into our conflict, after we pray, Lord, help me to try to work toward a resolution that's going to honor you, that is going to make reconciliation more likely, after we invite God into the conflict and go to higher ground, the very next thing that we have to do, and the order is important,
is get real about ourselves. We have to be brutally honest about what our part in the conflict is. And we start with our part. We start with working on what we need to work on before we try to show the other person what their part is. And so we find that in arguments, the word that we tend to use the most is you. You did this to me. You were late. You're late all the time, right? You always leave your socks on the floor. You always rush right from the front door to your man cave and turn on CNN. You don't even kiss me when you come in, right? You never tell me thank you for cooking dinner. You always nag me. You always tell me what to do. You never give me any peace and quiet, right? At work, we say to our boss, you've never really liked me, right? Why do you always pick on me? Why are you singling me out? And we use the word you over and over and over again, where the word that we should be using more often is what? I. And the fact that we do this reveals our natural compulsion to blame others for our uncomfortable feelings, to blame others for what's going wrong in our lives. But this is not the way of Scripture. And so I want you to take a look at me this morning by turning to Matthew 7. We're going to begin with verse 3, Matthew 7:3. If you don't have a Bible or a tablet, it is going to be projected, and it actually is now projected on the screen. And so I'm going to read this, and I'd like you to follow along. This is a very famous quote of Jesus. Even folks who come to church and do not consider themselves disciples, even people of other religions recognize this quote because regardless of who you are, it has incredible power. Okay? And so this is what it says in Matthew 7, beginning with verse 3. It says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" Now, another translation is the big, fat, honking log. That's the Pastor Mark Reynolds translation. How can you go to find the speck of sawdust, the speck of dust in your neighbor's eye when you've got a big, fat, somebody say big, fat, complete the sentence, honking log. Yeah, and don't look at your neighbor when you say big, fat. So Jesus is saying, you're often trying to correct others when you need to look at yourself first. He goes on to say, how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And again, if you can imagine the picture here of you standing in front of somebody else, and they're kind of blinking a little bit because something's in their eye, and then when you walk up to them, you've got a giant log protruding from your face. And as you try to get close to get that speck, what are you doing? You're hitting them in the face with your log. Right? And the problem is that oftentimes we're not even aware of it. A lot of times we are completely blind to our own issues. We have blind spots. And when we are aware of what we're doing to contribute to the problem, our natural tendency is to deny it, to hide it, to minimize it, to justify it. The last thing that we want to do is be really open and honest about it for whatever reason. And because we have blind spots that we need other people sometimes to help us see, it's important to note in this passage that Jesus is not saying you can never try to show someone their part in the conflict. He's not saying that when someone does you wrong that you can't ever go up and confront them. Remember, we looked at some other passages in previous weeks, and one of which says that we must tell each other the truth in love, speak the truth in love, and try to gently restore people who go off the rails, right, in your relationship. So it's not that we can't help people see their part. It's not that we can't help them see their blind spot or confront them when there's kind of a recalcitrant spirit. It's not that at all. Jesus is saying here, this is just not the right starting place. You can never start addressing conflict by pointing the finger and saying you. Well, you can, but it doesn't work very well, number one. And number two, if you do that, you're living contrary to Scripture. Because what Jesus is saying is, you must start with your part. You guys say that with me. Start with your part. Say it again. Start with your part. It's kind of like, has anybody ever done algebra? I'm not asking if you were good at algebra. Did you ever do algebra? Raise your hand in high school or college, right? And what you'll notice in algebra is that there are brackets around, letters and numbers. And, at first you might have thought, how can there be numbers and math problems? That's crazy. But what you understand in algebra is that the only way to get the right answer is if you work the problem in the right order, right? And that's where I always went wrong. I knew how to add, subtract, divide, and multiply. I just didn't know how to do it in the right order, so I consistently got the wrong answer. I had to take algebra twice in college, right? So, but the main idea here is that there is an order of operations, and if you start in the wrong place and you work the problem in the wrong order, you're going to end up with the wrong answer. And there's a sense in which Jesus, in this passage, is saying to us, there is an order of operations in dealing with conflict. And if you start by pointing the finger and saying you're getting a false start, and it's always going to lead to the wrong answer. You have to start with yourself. Now, you might say, well, Pastor Mark, what if I get into an argument with someone and I do something really, really small and they do something really, really big? Right. So the perfect example here is husband comes home from work, or you can switch it, right? I'll be an equal opportunity offender. Doesn't matter who it is, but someone walks in from work and they're kind of grumpy and they make a sideways comment to their spouse. And then their spouse, who's had a worse day, flies off the handle, right? Has anybody experienced this? Don't say yes if your spouse is sitting next to you, but just kind of say it in your mind, right? Have you ever experienced this where the response, and it's really not a response, it's a reaction, it's a compulsive reaction, is so disproportionate to what's going on, right? So you walk in and say, we're having broccoli for dinner, huh? And then, boom, right? That's the spark. Remember the first message? That's the spark. And then the cravings, the desires, the expectations of the gasoline, boom, and then imagine the wife flying off the handle. You never appreciate anything that I do. You never appreciate that I work all day just like you do, and I come home and I cook, and I've got the kids, and she's screaming and yelling and freaking out. And you say to yourself, clearly, what I did was much smaller than what she did, so it seems logical that we would focus on the larger offense. Jesus says, no. As counterintuitive as it might be, if you were going to go to that person and try to resolve that conflict, even if their part is 100 times bigger than yours and you have a teeny tiny part, you still have to start with your own part. There's a phrase that I found when doing research for this message and on the Peacemaking ministry video that I'm watching, and we're going to put it up on the screen, and it says this. Can we get it? Oh, that's not it. I guess I deleted that slide. Here's what it is, okay? Even if you are only 2% wrong, you are 100% responsible for that 2%. I'm going to say that again because it's a powerful way of putting it. Even if you were only 2% wrong, you are still 100% responsible for that 2%. So again, you walk in and you make a snide comment. That might be 2%. The explosion might be the 98%. But you can't blame the other person and say, well, you really overreacted and what's your problem? And you must have issues. And boy, somebody had a bad day. And then kind of withdraw your affection. That would be an escaping response. Nor can you lash out and go, why are you yelling at me? You're freaking out. It's just something really tiny. That's an attacking response, right? No, even though her part might be bigger, you have to own that 2%, and that's exactly where you start. Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple, the way that you handle conflict has to be my way, not your way. And my way says you not only invite God into your conflict, but you start with your own part. Now, some of you here might be thinking, why? Why did Jesus give this command, right? It feels much better to blame the other person. Right? That everything in me wants to blame the other person and shift the focus off of me. So why did Jesus tell us to do this? Or I guess the better question is, why do we actually do what Jesus says? We do what Jesus says as Christians, and if you're not a Christian, you're not going to be satisfied with this answer, but I'll give you another one in just a minute. If you're a Christian, the reason why you start with your part is because Jesus said you need to start with your part. And if we are Christians, that means that we have made a decision to say yes to Jesus. We have said, Jesus, I want you not only to be my Savior, I not only want you to forgive my sins and, restore me to favor with the Father so that I can have eternal life. That's only one part of salvation. Lord, be my Savior. The other part is be my Lord and Master. And so true disciples don't only ask Jesus for forgiveness, true disciples ask for direction. And when Jesus gives the direction, we try to be obedient to that. Now, there are some folks here that might not be Christians. You're just thinking, I don't know about this Jesus stuff, so why should I do this? Here's the answer. It works. It's very simple. It works. Because not only does Jesus tell us this, but then years later, modern psychologists tell us this. It works. Why does it work? Because it is tied to what we might call the golden rule of response. The golden rule of response. If you remember, Jesus said, do unto others, say it with me, church, as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And when we fully understand what Jesus is saying here, at least one thing that he's saying is that people will tend to treat you like you treat them. So, if you are willing to make the first apology, if you apologize to them, they are more likely to do what? Apologize to you. If you take the leap into the void to try to interrupt this, the vicious circle of argument, and you say, hey, please, I just want you to know, I need you to forgive me, right? If you forgive them, what are they more likely to do? Forgive you, right? So this is the rule of the golden response. If you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. The first confession is a catalyst for reconciliation. The first confession is a catalyst for reconciliation. And if you go back to the previous messages, what we'll see is that the whole goal of conflict resolution is not getting your way. It's not even resolving this specific issue. The larger goal is reconciliation. So the way that you go about resolving the problem has to make reconciliation more likely. Okay? And the first confession is the catalyst for reconciliation. It gets the ball rolling. It interrupts the vicious cycle of you did this and you did that and constant blaming. So whether or not we start out the argument by blaming the other person or owning our part will in many ways determine the whole trajectory of the argument. Right? It'll determine how things unfold. And someone, at some point, has to break the cycle if you're going to get unstuck. If all you're doing is pointing your finger and all they're doing is pointing their finger, it's going to go round and round and round. There will be no resolution. Somebody has to be the bigger person, and they have to step up and say, okay, let's deal with my part first. And then defenses are softened, and people are much more likely to reciprocate. So the next question is, well, how in the world do I do this? I mean, even if I understand what Jesus is asking of me, even if I understand that he's saying, own your part first, become aware of what you bring to the conflict, and work on that first, even if I know that that's what I'm supposed to do, how exactly do I do it? And I want to remind you what the Bible says. It's the key verse from the first message in this series. And if you remember, we talked about how the beginning of all conflicts is cravings of the heart. We have a desire. We want something. And if we don't handle that properly, then that desire, that want, that wish turns into a demand. And that is the root of the conflict. And so we get mentally entrenched in the idea, I have to have my way in this situation. And if I don't, I can't be happy. I can't be at peace. I can't feel safe. And in order to illustrate this point, we looked at the letter of James, chapter 4, beginning with verse 1. And we're going to put it up here. And this should be a refresher for those who were here for the first message. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your, say it with me, church, desires? Say it again. Desires that battle within you. You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you, say it with me, church, quarrel and fight. So remember, what James is saying is that all the fussing, all the fighting, all the yelling, all the passive-aggressive jabs, all the walking away and the threatening to leave and the ending of the relationship, these are all symptoms of a deeper problem. The deeper problem, it's the cravings. It's the demands, the insisting that I have my way. And if we're going to deal with conflict in a lasting way and have any peace in this life, then we have to get in touch with these cravings and we have to deal with them. We not only have to invite God into our situation and say, Lord, give me the wisdom to see the cravings for what they are and give me the power to resolve this conflict in a way that honors you, and show me, Lord, show me clearly what my part is, right? So, this morning, we're going on a log hunt, okay? We're going to go on a log hunt because you have to ruthlessly hunt down the logs in your own eye. You have to ruthlessly hunt down the cravings in your own heart that make you compulsively react in ways that get you stuck in these unhealthy arguments. So how do you go on a log hunt and figure out what cravings are driving your unhealthy responses? I want to remind you that the Bible calls these cravings idols. This is actually very important because it's not just changing a behavior, right? The long-term solution is going to be dethroning an idol. It's not just tweaking your relational style, as a psychologist might tell you. It is uncovering an idol so that you can stop worshiping that idol and start worshiping the one true God. We're going to see as we move along that that's really what is at the heart of all of this. So there are things that we set our hearts on that we want more than anything else. And we think to ourselves, unless I get this, I will not be happy. Unless I get the respect from this person that I deserve, I will not be happy. Unless I get peace and quiet, I will not be happy. Unless I make this amount of money, I will not be happy. Right? Or it might be something that we set our heart against that we have to avoid in order to feel happy and secure. Right? But nevertheless, there are things that we set our hearts on, and the craving becomes a demand, and we say, I've got to get my way in this situation, or I cannot be at peace. Now, why is this important? Because idols demand worship, and we will do just about anything to get our way when that craving becomes a demand, including hurt other people. Remember that uncomfortable feelings are always signals that something has gone wrong. They're red flags, they're warning signs, kind of like if you look at your car and the engine light comes on. Right? That's what a feeling is, whether it's sadness or depression or anger or bitterness or whatever the case might be. God gave you this warning signal system so that when something is going afoul in your life and you need to stop and deal with it, these different feelings come on just like lights on a dashboard. And if we look specifically at anger, which drives most conflict, what we see is that anger is a signal that an idol has been poked. Anger is a signal that an idol is being starved. And that idol wants to be fed. And it's jumping up and down like a 2-year-old in your heart going, gimme, 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 gimme. And that's where that anger is coming from. An idol is being poked. And in fact, I want you to remember that anything that you think you must have in order to be secure and happy can become an idol, right? It's not just gods and other religions. It's not just golden calves. It's not even just money, because we talk about how we idolize money a lot. But think of things like respect. Right? This is a struggle that I have had over the years. Right? I desire respect. And when I feel like someone has disrespected me, it triggers uncomfortable feelings. And in the past, especially when I was much younger, I would become demanding and willful, and I would say, "You're going to respect me." And I wanted respect in those moments when I was emotionally flooded. I wanted respect more than anything else. And when that happens, oftentimes you act out of character and you do things you normally wouldn't do in order to secure that idol, in order to get that respect. Right? For some of you, it can be peace and quiet. I want peace and quiet. The kids are screaming all the time. My wife's nagging me. My friends won't stop texting me. I just need some peace and quiet. And when that desire for peace and quiet becomes a demand, and you say, "I can't be happy unless I get some peace and quiet," then you're more likely to respond in forceful ways, in punishing ways when you don't get what you want. So idols can be things like respect. They can be peace and quiet. Some people idolize control. I've got to have control in this situation or I cannot feel safe or happy. Some people idolize attention. I must have attention. I must have attention from you or you or you or you. But if someone's not giving me attention, then I feel very uncomfortable and I start becoming demanding. And we can become demanding by saying, "Hey, I really want your attention and you're ignoring me." Or we can do it in very passive-aggressive ways by dominating a conversation. So after you share, somebody else shares, and while they're sharing, you interrupt them and insert your position because you've got to have attention. Right? Some people crave acceptance, and that becomes the demand. You have to accept me. It doesn't matter if I'm different. You have to accept me, and if you don't accept me, then I can't be happy. The perfect spouse, the desire for a perfect spouse, the desire for perfect friends, money, sex, anything can become an idol. And if you're going to get to the deepest roots of the problems that drive conflict in your life, you have to understand how idols work. The Bible is clear from Genesis to Revelation that idols always bring slavery. You start out thinking that you own them, and pretty soon they own you. Anybody who struggled with an addiction to alcohol or drugs or gambling or pornography or whatever the case might be, who's gotten recovery from that, you will know when you look back that you always thought when you were active in your addiction that you were in control. And at some point, you cross an imperceptible line and you look backwards and you realize, I'm not controlling this thing is controlling me, and the very first step is to admit that you're powerless. And those dynamics that recovering addicts deal with are the same dynamics that we struggle with when we're dealing with sin. Any idol in your heart, you start out thinking, I'm in control, and if you don't deal with it or allow God to deal with it in you, eventually it will come to control you. So let me just briefly tell you how idols work. They start out with innocent desires. There's nothing wrong with this, right? Have you ever wanted anything? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody's wanted. I've wanted something. You've wanted something, right? So we all want things. And there's nothing wrong with desire. There's nothing wrong with wanting. But when we become willful and this desire turns into a demand, a forceful demand, it can easily be transferred into an idol. And again, we begin to think, if I don't get my way in this situation, if I don't get this idol fed, then I can't be safe and I can't be happy. But here's the problem. We don't always get what we want. Now, I'm really disappointed the world's set up this way. But it is. There are a lot of things that I want that I can't have. There are a lot of things that I want that God doesn't want for me. There's a lot of things that I'm tempted to latch onto that I know in my heart of hearts is poisonous to my spirit, but nevertheless I'm still tempted to grab for it. This is part of what it means to be a human being. And when we don't get what we want, we experience feelings of disappointment, frustration, and anger. And when we experience disappointment, frustration, or anger, we start making sweeping judgments based on worst-case scenarios. Are you awake, church? Do you know this to be true? Say amen. And so we say things like, my boss never really liked me. See how general and sweeping that is? Sweeping and negative. He really doesn't love me. He says he does, but he really doesn't love me. She doesn't really care anything about my feelings. My partner is such a bad spouse. I'd be happier if I could find somebody else. Right? Desire turns into a demand. And then, when the demand is not met, we feel disappointment. Disappointment leads to sweeping negative judgments. And here's the final step. The negative judgment leads to, you ready, church? Punishment. The goal at that point is to punish the other person. Not to be reconciled, not even really to get your way. You might have even capitulated to the fact that you're not going to get your way. The goal becomes punishment. And there are lots of different ways that we do this. There are attack modes of punishment: yelling, screaming, fussing, fighting, pushing, hitting. Right? These are attack modes. But there's also the escape mode forms of punishment. Giving someone the cold shoulder, withdrawing your attention, your affection, ignoring, threatening to leave, ending the relationship, making pointed jokes that you're trying to hurt the other person and then pass it off as, oh, I'm just kidding. Right? So, regardless of whether you engage in attacking forms of punishment or escaping forms of punishment, the idea is that the goal is to send a very clear message. If you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm going to make you pay for it. Now, I don't want to get off on a long tangent, but I do want to say that I think that the most popular form of punishment we use is the cold shoulder. Right? Someone disappoints us, and now all of a sudden we're chilly towards them. We're cold. We withdraw our attention. We withdraw our affection. We start ignoring them. We give them the cold shoulder. And what we're actually trying to accomplish here is quite wicked. Because what we're trying to do with this form of punishment is train, everybody say train the other person. That's wicked. That's toxic. What we're saying is, you either do what I want you to do, or else. We're saying, as long as you conform to what I want, as long as you do what I want you to do, and you are the person that I want you to be, then I will be happy, and I will act loving toward you, and I will engage you, and everything will be fine. But the minute that you do something that I don't want you to do, or the minute that you try to be your own person, and it frustrates or disappoints me, then I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to withdraw my affection. I'm not going to engage you anymore. I'm going to go off in a corner and I'm going to pout. And I'm just going to wait until you come and apologize to me. And I can wait a long time. I can wait 5 minutes. I can wait 5 days. I'll try to use churchy words, I'll wait 5 years. How many people know of someone in a standoff with a family member or a friend that has lasted 5 years or longer? Raise your hand. Look around, folks. Right? It's wicked. It's toxic. Let me tell you something. If you don't accept the person for who they are, and if you try to punish them when they don't conform to their image, to the image that you have of them, that is going to breed resentment and anger and eventually hatred. The people that you are trying to control and train and manipulate in these passive-aggressive ways are going to wake up one day and they're going to hate your guts. And the reconciliation is going to be all that much harder. And I just wanted to give a little attention to that because oftentimes that's our default punishment response. And we think that it's innocent. We think that hitting someone is really wrong, but ignoring someone, that's not quite as bad. But it can be just as painful, and it can be just as destructive. So whether it is an attacking response or an escaping response, whenever we are trying to punish people, right, we're not really dealing with the disease, we're dealing with the symptoms. So someone does something that we don't like, we feel uncomfortable, we point the finger, we blame them, we make judgments about them, and then we try to punish them, right? I'm sorry, Marty, am I? Okay, so should I go to this? Okay. Well, when I totally lose it, I'll switch over. So regardless of how you're punishing, as you're punishing people, you're only dealing with the symptoms. Do you understand that? You're only dealing with the symptoms. Because when you are trying to judge them and punish them, you're trying to get them to change their behavior to make you feel better. And you feeling better is not the lasting solution. You figuring out what is driving the discomfort and compelling you to act badly is what we really need to be doing. So how do we get to the deeper issue? How do we uncover the idols in our hearts and get to the point where we can start with what we bring to really have lasting solutions? And I want to tell you that one of the best ways is to start with a series of penetrating questions. And this is how we're going to end today. And we're going to put them up on the screen. Okay, so the first question is, when you're trying to uncover an idol in your heart, when you're trying to figure out what is that craving that is compelling me to act in ways that dishonor God and break relationship, one of the very first questions you should ask yourself is, what do I fear the most? What do I worry about the most? This is something that Casey and I have had many, many conversations about. I believe that fear lies behind about 99.999% of our sin. What are you scared of? What you worry about all the time or what you're most scared of could be an idol. Here's another question. What do I want the most? What do I desire the most? Where are the strongest cravings in my heart? That might be an indication of an idol. Here's another way of asking that question, but going a little deeper. What do I want so badly that I'm willing to sin to get it? Boy, that's a tough one, isn't it? What do I want so badly that I am willing to intentionally violate what I know to be good, right, and true in order to get my way? I can guarantee you that if there's something behind that question, that is an idol that must fall in your heart. And it doesn't have to be big. Let me give you a very simple example that might seem petty on the surface, but is actually a way of sinning to get what you want. I know someone who went to their husband and said, I really want a new oven and stove. The one that I have is from the 1960s. And the husband says, I just don't think we can afford that. And the reason why he doesn't think they can afford it is because he wants a 70-inch flat screen TV. And so he doesn't really want the oven and the stove. He wants something else. And so being able to say, instead of saying, I don't want a stove, I want a TV, there's this very subtle shift. I really don't think that we can afford it. Really? Really? Is that the real reason? If you know it's not the real reason, and you say that to get your way, you're doing something called what? Lying. And lying, my friends, is a sin. It's a sin. And so we can ask the question, what do I want so badly that I'm willing to sin to get it? That will uncover an idol. And then here's the final question you can ask, and this is the most scary one. What do people the closest to me think my idols are? Go to your husband or wife and say, you've been with me for a long time, what are my idols? And be ready to hear it. Go to your brother or your sister, your mom or your dad. Now, you want to make sure these are safe people. If they're dysfunctional, crazy people, don't go and ask them because you're not going to get a good answer. You want to make sure they're healthy people who love you and actually have your best interests at heart. But we all have someone that we trust like that, right? It might be a friend, it might be a family member, it could be a spouse. If you're an adult, do not Do not go to people that you know have it out for you. Okay? Parents, if your kids are a little older, ask them what your idols are. Here's the thing. The people closest to you, they know what your idols are. They know what they are. They've just been scared to death to tell you because they don't want to get it leveled. So say, listen, I've been reading the Bible and I've been hearing about conflict resolution. I'm going to open myself and I promise I'm not going to lash out at you. What are my idols? And then whatever they say, zip it and go pray about it. Lord, is there any truth to this? So these are the kinds of questions. And then the final thing that we ask is, okay, well, once I realize that the real heart of the problem are cravings that turn into demands, and those demands become idols. Once I realize that that's the dynamic I'm dealing with, and once I ask these penetrating questions to uncover what the idols are, the next question, the last question is, how do I get it out of my life? How do I extract it from the roots and pull it out? Right? And this is important because if you don't deal with this, I can promise you that I'll be talking to you next year and you'll be having the same kind of fights with the same kind of people. Until you get at the roots and you pull that idol out of your heart, this is going to be a perpetual thorn in your side and a perpetual broken place in your relationship. You have to get down to the roots and pull it out, or you're going to keep repeating it. So how do we do this to get lasting change? Remember, these are idols, and idols demand worship. And when we are worshiping false gods, the way that we change is by, number one, repenting. If you are worshiping something other than God and you are made aware of it, you need to say, the first thing you need to do is get on your knees and say, God, I'm sorry. I confess that I'm worshiping a false god here, whether it's fear or respect or peace and quiet, whatever the case might be. I acknowledge it. I'm sorry. Forgive me and give me the power to be restored to health. Forgive me, Lord. So repentance is the first step. And the second step is to stop worshiping the idol and turn your attention to the one true God. There's an old dead guy named Thomas Chalmers. He was a Scottish minister who lived in the 1800s, and he coins this really, really cool phrase that helps us get to the heart of the matter. Now it's going to sound a little odd, but just think about it, okay? He calls it the expulsive power, say it with me, an expulsive power of a new affection. The expulsive power of a new affection. He says, if you want to get rid of something, if you want to get rid of a love in your heart that's inappropriate or inordinate, what you do is you love something else more. Instead of giving your attention, your affection, your acceptance, your love to this thing over here that you know is hurting you and destroying your relationships, you turn your back on those things. You stop worshiping those things. You stop giving them your dedication, love, and loyalty. And you turn toward God and you try to cultivate a love of God that will be so big that the power of this thing back here dissolves. The more that you love God, the more you pursue a relationship with God, the more you cultivate a relationship with God, the less power those idols are going to have in your heart. So the goal is to be so satisfied in God that we don't have to have a perfect spouse, that we don't have to have perfect kids, that we don't have to get respect from everybody in peace and quiet. We won't be insisting on all of these things because our hearts will be filled to overflowing with God, and all of these things that ran our lives behind our backs will lose their power. And I want to say as a final thing, as I invite the praise band to come up, that this is a lifelong journey. Because if I say, now leave and do this today, you're going to feel overwhelmed. Right? It's a lifelong journey. What you need to understand is that the human heart is an idol factory. This is a quote by a Catholic theologian named Karl Rahner. He said, our hearts, the human heart, is an idol factory. And dealing with our idols is like playing a continuous game of whack-a-mole. Does anybody play whack-a-mole with your kids at Family Fun Center or Chuck E. Cheese? I mean, what ends up happening, right? The game starts and something pops up. You take your mallet, you hit it. So that idol pops up. Here comes respect, and I'm going to demand respect, and then we whack it, boom. And then as soon as we whack respect, what happens? Peace and quiet pops up over here. And we whack peace and quiet. Right? And then the desire to control the situation pops up over here, and we hit that with a hammer. And then before we know it, respect pops back up again. And it's like whack-a-mole. We're constantly hitting these moles on top of their head and saying, stay down, right? But regardless of what's popping up and how fast and how often, the solution is always the same according to Scripture. Number one, invite God into your conflict. And instead of asking, how can I get what I want, you ask, how can I resolve this in a way that will honor God and make reconciliation more likely? That's step one. And then step two is to get real about yourself. Start with your part. Now we're going to close by reading a short verse of Scripture together. We're going to throw it up on the screen. I want to read this together. This is from Psalm 139. Because I don't just want to preach it to you, church. I want to lead you in an opportunity to do it. And so I'm going to ask you to read this with me, and then we're going to say our closing prayer, and then we're going to dismiss, okay? So will you join me? Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Let that prayer saturate your heart and your mind. Would you please stand?